morning. So this is just a really short video to help you when you are trying to figure out what muscle groups are being targeted when you're doing what exercise. When you are working out, it's really easy to feel where the muscle is being trained because you are doing high weight or you're doing the exercise a lot of times, a lot of repetitions, and so you start to feel that fatigue in the particular muscle that it's training. But it's much harder to determine which muscle is being targeted when you're planning a workout or when you're sitting for a test and you're trying to imagine what muscle is being worked for what particular exercise. Okay, so this video is going to kind of walk you through a couple tips, tricks to determine which muscles are being targeted when. So your muscles have two general movements. There's a contraction where the muscles get shorter, and then there's also an extension where the muscles get longer. When a muscle contracts, those muscle fibers are being trained. Okay, so when I do a bicep curl, and you can kind of see on my arm, I start with my arm straight down, and this muscle is very, very long. Okay, it's as long as it's going to get. As I bring my elbow up, you can actually see this muscle kind of coming out, and it's getting shorter and thicker. Okay, so when I do that movement, all right, so from straight to bent, you can see this muscle, the bicep, getting shorter, and that's how I know that muscle is being trained. Okay, on the other side, you can see right now my tricep on the back is as long as it's ever going to be. So as I bring my arm from this position at 90 degrees to straight, you can see this muscle getting shorter and this muscle is being trained here. Okay, so my bicep contracts as I bring my arm up, so that muscle is working, and then as I bring my arm down, the tricep contracts. Okay, so if I want to train my tricep, I have to be doing motions that are going from a bent to a straight. Okay, so a couple examples of that, I'll sit down so you can see, is if I am doing a tricep extension, so with my arm over my head, all right, I go from bent elbow, long tricep, to straight arm, short tricep. Okay, so a tricep extension is taking the weight from here to here, so making my tricep contract. Okay, so that's the upper body, or that's the arm. If we are doing the chest, okay, the chest is here in a neutral position. All right, in order to make my chest contract, my shoulders need to rotate forward. Okay, so it makes these muscles smaller. So when these muscles are being made smaller, that's how I know these muscles are being trained. Okay, so some examples of movements or exercises that would train your pectorals, your chest, would be anything where you're pushing forward. Okay, so push up, bench press. Okay, anything where these shoulders are rotating forward and these muscles are contracting. On the opposite end, so for my back, any movement where I'm pulling. Okay, so I'm pulling my shoulder blades together. Okay, that is going to work these muscles, making these muscles shorter. Okay, and that's how I know they're being trained. All right, abdominals. We know we're working our abdominals when we're doing a crunch, right? If you're coming forward, okay, the muscles go from being nice and long to being short and contracted. Okay, so if I'm doing a crunch, I go from here to here. Okay, and so that's how I know I'm using my abdominal muscles. If I want to use my lower back, it's the exact opposite. Okay, so if I'm standing up straight, these muscles are nice and long, but as soon as I extend back, these muscles are being contracted. And so that's how I know that these muscles are working. Okay. The next major muscle groups are going to be your quads and your hamstrings. Okay, so for these, I'm actually going to sit. You can see, yeah. So if I'm sitting, right, and my knee is bent, my knee is at my leg is at a neutral position, right, just like I'm sitting down. Both muscles are equally long. Okay. As I bring my lower leg up, though, this muscle, the quadricep, has to contract, okay? It has to go from, you can see, it goes from being long, and then as the knee comes back, it shortens a little bit. So you can see that muscle, the quadricep, is what works to bring your leg up, okay? Conversely, the hamstring now is at its longest point when my leg is straight, but it shortens when I bring my knee back down, okay? So if I have weight on the front of my leg, okay, like a leg extension, and I go from lifting the weight from being at a neutral position here with my leg hanging down to a straightened position, okay, and remember the weight's up here, that's working my quadricep. Versus if I have the weight here and I start at a straight leg and then I bend my knee and bring the weight back, that's working my hamstring, okay? All right, so all exercises have two phases, and for our purposes, we're going to call it the easy phase and the hard phase, okay? So there's two movements, usually a down and back, or forward and back, or push and a pull, and one of them is going to be more difficult than the other because you have gravity and weight working against you, okay? So for example, if I'm doing a squat, when I come down, this is a much easier position to get into than when I push back up. Okay, so for a squat, this would be the easy phase, and this would be the hard phase. Okay, so when I'm going through the easy phase, I can feel my hamstrings elongate, get longer, right? And as I push up, I can feel them getting shorter. Okay, same thing with my glutes. When I come down, I can feel the stretch in the back of my hip, and then as I come up, it gets tighter. Okay, my quads, when I come down, we've got a little bit more of a stretch. When I come up, they have to contract. Okay, so you have all three muscle groups working together on that hard phase in order to bring you back up to your starting position. So all three of those muscle groups would be trained in a squat. A squat is a great exercise to train multiple muscle groups in your quad, or in your leg, sorry. Another one would be, if we go back to a push-up, right? The down part is the easy part, right? It's easy to get down. It's much harder to get back up again, okay? It's much harder to go from here to here, all right? So if I do it from the side, and if I'm on the ground, right? So imagine I'm on the ground in a plank position, and I come down to the floor, okay? That's easy. This part is much more difficult. Okay, so if we're talking about just this phase, the hard phase, my tricep is getting shorter, right? I go from the bent elbow to the straight arm, just like we did before. So bent elbow to straight arm, bent elbow to straight arm. So this muscle is getting shorter. My shoulder is also getting shorter in that movement, okay? So I can feel it elongate and then contract, all right, especially here. My chest goes from really long, right, really extended, stretched, to that full contraction in the front, okay? So extended, contracted on that hard phase. So for a push-up, my chest, my pectorals are contracting, my shoulder, like the front of my shoulder is contracting, right, as well as my tricep going from that bent elbow to that straight elbow. So I hope this video gives you guys some clues as to what muscles are being trained as you do particular movements. Think about which muscles are getting shorter during that hard phase of exercise.